Hi, this is Chuck Wolf, and welcome to Place Parts Episode 9. Today we're going to spend about 20 minutes speaking with well-known United Kingdom urbanist Rob Cowan about the meaning and non-meaning of the word character, about his cartoons, about his pending new book, as well as his long-established tool for immersing in and better understanding, contextually, a changing community called Place Check, which I've cited a lot in my writings in the last few years, including our recent and very pending book, Sustaining a City's Culture and Character. In fact, the book is so pending that I got my copy here in the United Kingdom last week. The official release date in the United States is next Monday, the 22nd of February, 2021, and here in the United Kingdom a bit later. So on to our discussion with Rob, and I hope you'll enjoy it. Rob Cowan, it's pretty delightful to be on this Zoom call, and it's probably worth my recounting how we got here. When I was writing Seeing the Better City some years ago, I came across what I thought then was and still think was and is a fantastic way of understanding a place called Place Check, which Rob has curated through the years. And indeed, I reference it again in Sustaining a City's Culture and Character. Rob and I had regular meetings in Richmond Park before the pandemic came upon us. And so we're emulating our Richmond Park meetings on Zoom now between Wimbledon and Newbury.
With fewer deer.
It's not bad. It's not bad. There's no coffee, but only the coffee we make. But anyway, Rob, I've been very fortunate in being able to speak with you at length about many of the issues which are dear to both of us. And I know you're working on a new book as well on urban design, and you're often called a leading urban design trainer in the United Kingdom. What's your new book about, and when's it coming out?
It's called Essential Urban Design, and it's due out fairly soon in the summer, I think, summer 2021. And it's a sort of primer of urban design. So it's for people who probably don't know much about urban design, maybe who are students of urban design, or they're architects or planners or landscape architects or highway engineers who are told that actually they're urban designers, and they think, well, what is urban design, and how do we do it? So there's stuff about the history of urban design and the politics of it, and character and appraisals, and there's a method of design review. And there's a lot of good examples of urban design of various types of master plans and other ways, and discussions of why it is that 94% of all master plans fail. So lots of good stuff.
No, that sounds
a lot of drawing. I suppose one strange thing about it is there are no photographs in it, and almost no CGI. Computer-made urban design drawings, and so it's full of hand-drawn drawings. Not because I've got anything against all the kind of drawings that urban designers do on computers, but to me, there's nothing like a hand-drawn image to give you an idea of how the designer is thinking and expressing themselves, and getting an idea of a connection between the hand and the brain, and the pencil or the pen or the paintbrush. Lots of drawings, and
so these are
by good designers, and some and a lot of line drawings by me.
Right. I was going to ask about your cartoons, because you've championed.
Not as many cartoons as there were, so the publisher is sort of saying, "Hey, this is a serious primer of design," and he sees my tendency whenever I want to make any point to think actually, this could be put much more concisely in a cartoon.
But you're right about that. You're right about that.
Yeah, that's right. But if I'd been left to myself, it would have ended up as a cartoon book.
Yeah.
So
Well,
is saying we want people to take this seriously. So cartoons, and so it looks more serious.
Yeah.
I need to be saved from myself.
Well, you do. I mean, for anyone who's not seen them, you have fantastic cartoons on Twitter that are sometimes not so satirical. Sometimes they're absolutely perfect profiles of the day-to-day drudgery of planning and urban design administration issues of the day, often including cartoons of mask-wearing bureaucrats or ordinary citizens. And no, it's great. And although I suppose I've gone in the direction of photography that can be subject to its own criticisms, that's always been upfront and admittedly my medium to do some of the same things you try and do. So that's why I always enjoy talking with you so much. Well,
your photographs are very effective, and we live in a visual world, and a photograph and a good short caption like you write, it just makes a point very succinctly in a way that people will look at in the way that they necessarily read a slab of text.
Yeah, well, it's been a fascinating journey, and I know we often talk about what we're learning from people's responses to these things we throw out there, and it's more to follow on that. I think one thing that we've talked about a lot in our coffees and now our Zoom chats is something that I take on rather aggressively, and that is the inadequacy of mere words to describe what is a successful place or an optimal way of addressing change. Words like authenticity, which I try to absolutely deconstruct, and one of our mutual favorites is character, because people talk about character houses, character communities. And my point is always, of course, to bring in another magic word, that determination is very contextual. What have you said in your new book, or perhaps your older writings about character? What are your thoughts about the role of character as people parlay that word indiscriminately today?
I think the problem with urban design and a lot of other spheres of life is that people take abstract words as though they mean a lot, which they don't. We have lots of words, and generally we communicate in sentences and paragraphs and pages, because life is complex, and particularly urban life is complex. And the temptation is to look for words like character or beauty and sustainability and assume that they communicate an enormous amount. Well, they don't. They're fine maybe for a chapter heading, or as something to tell people what we're now going to talk about. But they don't communicate. For example, a local plan will say development should be responsive to local character. And that'll be a policy. And the planners will say to a developer, you've got to respond to local character. And the developer thinks, well, there's a simple word. There must be a simple thing that is local character. And so the office junior is sent to find out what it is. And they will come back and they say, oh, it's banded brickwork, or it's flint. And the developer will say to the planners, yeah, we're going to put some banded brickwork on, matching the Victorian houses, and we're going to face our standard house units with some flint. and that's responsive to local character. And to me, character is a very complex thing, and what we call character is a summation of the complexity of the particular place. And we need to understand that complexity, which is to do with the physical form of the place and the materials and how people build, and then of the people themselves, who lives there, what they do, what they did in the past, the local economy, the local society, the local ecology. And if we want to respond to character, we need to respond to all of these things. And it's difficult. It's a big job to work out what is the to understand the place, and then to understand how to respond to it, how development should respond to it. But planning and urban design are complex and difficult things, and fascinating and fun to do. But if you just look for simple solutions relating to simple words like character and sustainability and beauty, you're not going to get very far, and we're going to really make better places.
Well, maybe that's a setup question, because I believe I quote you saying some very similar things in chapter 2, chapter 3.
Yeah,
chapter 3.
You've made a great contribution to helping people to think about how we analyze places, and you've written 3 books about it, because it's it is a complex thing to do, but it's also fun, and you believe that people maybe without any background in this sort of thing can find ways of looking at and understanding places that will help them to do their job better, or will just help them understand and appreciate places where they live.
Right. Well, I appreciate you saying so, and I want to repeat for whoever might be listening that this is the happenstance and the wonder of life, in that I had run across Rob before I ever knew that I would be living in the United Kingdom, and here we are talking about the things that we've both written about. And on that topic in particular, I mentioned chapter 3 a moment ago. I think rather extensively do what I did in Seeing the Better City, and that is explain your place check tool and cast it against something that is even more unimpeachable, as we say, to use a term of the day, and that is a study guide that a gentleman here in the United Kingdom put together for A-level geography exams, in looking at the full range of what a city is, and disciplines that apply, and ways to learn more. And as you all know, I think that's critically important. And without denying the critical importance of the issues of the day, be they enhanced approach to a community voice, or doing what we can at a local level to offset climate change, we need to learn the particulars of the place. We need to immerse, as I say, ad nauseum in my recent writing. So place check, it always struck me that you were at least 20 years ago onto the same idea, and you created a method which you've continued to refine. Let's pretend I don't know about place check. What's your elevator speech on what it is, who it's for, how it works, and why?
Yeah, I like the idea of calling it a method, because it's so simple. And I suppose the question was always, as the question that you asked yourself, how do we understand the place? How do we find out about a place? How do we find out about how it can change? And it sort of struck me just suddenly overnight, really, that when people go out and wander around the street and talk to each other, an enormous amount of information comes out. Whether if they live in a place, they know an enormous amount about it, or if they're professionals, urban designers, planners visiting the place, they will ask different questions and see different things. But enormous amount of information comes out. And my big light bulb moment was to say, all we need is a way of actually encouraging people to go out onto the street and to look and talk about each other. So the first thing was to give it a name, place check, which makes you think that you're doing something, that it is a method, rather than actually what it is, which is just going out onto the street and talking. And then another key is to have 3 questions to ask. And they're very simple questions. What do we like about this place? What do we dislike? And what do we need to work on? So it's trying to set an agenda for a place. So the question, what do we need to work on? So it's not just, originally the question was, third question was, what do we want to improve? But then I thought, no, there's no point in just coming up with a list of things that could be better, because there'll be lots. But, if we're a group of people who are actually trying to make change happen, then the question for us is, what do we need to work on? What are we going to do? And maybe we'll, after this walkabout, just do 1 thing or 3 things. And then the rest of the method is on the website, www.placecheck.info. There's a lot of other questions that, in case you need prompts of other things to ask or to look at as you walk around. There they are, and there's about 150 of them. But actually, we very rarely use those, because you don't need a lot of prompts. Once people are in the street walking about, prompted by those 3 questions, that's all they need to know. And there's now a web app, so you can do it at home or with the tablet or on the phone as you walk around the street, and the app produces a map of the local area, and you can put markers on the map and write information about the 3 questions, and then it produces a spreadsheet with all the information that you put in on it and relating it to the particular location. So it's very simple questions producing a lot of complex information, which you can then people use it to in the early stages of neighborhood plans, community planning, and it's also used for consultations. But it's really, a lot of these similar systems tend to have very complex outputs, whereas PlaceCheck just answers some simple questions and comes up with, it can be a lot of information, but simple information about actual places, what people like, dislike, and what to work on.
Well, and what do you say? I was once in a debate with Mike Lydon, who's known as sort of one of the leading figures in tactical urbanism, the quick fixes, which I write about again, and I must say that I'm not opposed to those. They just need to be put in context, and oftentimes they play an absolutely seminal role in the reinvention of a place, in keeping with the issues of the day. But what do you say to the people who might say, as they've said to me, well, that takes too long, that requires too much effort, and we need things that people can put their arms around, and we can't go there anymore. It just takes too long, and it takes too long for decision makers to analyze and assess the spreadsheets. Oh, we should just go out and strike bike lanes. If we know we need protection for cyclists, or we need to create cycling highways, we should just go do it in somewhat of an insurgent way, and all will follow. And I must stress, I am not opposed to the need for those interventions. But what do you say to those who are a bit less patient with immersion?
Well, if it's something that's very complex, and there's a lot of things in cities are, we want to make something happen, but there are going to be a lot of different people involved. If it's if it is a cycle lane, well, there's a lot of different people who use the street in different ways, different forms of transport, and whatever we do is going to have a lot of different results. For different people, impacts on different people. And if we don't do the thinking up front, then the danger is that we'll do something and it'll turn out to be a disaster and money badly spent, and the intervention will be taken out, and people will end up being aggrieved and thinking it's not worth trying to do anything because
Right.
but if it is complex, we need to give it the attention it needs.
Right. And I think that's a great takeaway. I learned through some other research that I did relative to moving a town in northern Sweden. The lead consultant to the city of Kiruna, who was a planning professor, learned so much about the value of just sitting down and talking to people and doing, in effect, a casual form of place check to understand what was needed in moving a downtown to a new location. His take on this, as I write, was if we're put in a plan form, it would be something that would be opposed and subject to a whole lot of bureaucratic wrangling, and the result would not necessarily be optimal. And so there's many different glosses on this, and I really appreciate your perspective. So I hope you enjoyed hearing from Rob. His teaching, writing, cartoons, and a bit of his Plandemonium video series can be found on his new website, www.robcowan.co.uk. I think you can see after listening to us, if you're looking at, say, revisioning a downtown, such as here in Newbury, that's already been revisioned a couple of times, perhaps a consultant survey or blind application of tools from elsewhere aren't necessarily sufficient without further consideration of the meaning of words such as character, the use of tools such as place check, as well as perhaps a Rob Cowan cartoon. So as we pan our way around a scene that asks us to determine what character might really mean in this context, and encounter the expectations and potential disappointments we've talked about before, it's probably a good time to say we'll see you next time on Place Parts in a few days.